Now I'm joined by Dan Strollo from In Control Family Foundation.
Correct.
And I knew it as In Control Crash Prevention, but that's one of the programs they run. Welcome, first of all, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
And tell us a little bit about what In Control Family Foundation is.
Sure. We are a nonprofit, and we're focused on reducing crashes for New England, but our passion is kind of work with teenagers because they crash at the highest rates. But we work with drivers of all ages and in all types of vehicles, for that matter.
So you gave me a statistic earlier. I just want you to repeat it.
Absolutely.
Tell me about the frequency of crashes for young drivers.
For young drivers, and what's interesting is the number one cause of death for ages 15 to 18 has always been, or not always, but for the last 50 some odd years has been car crashes. When you look today, it's actually 19 to 25 is worse than 15 to 18. But the thing that scares me when you kind of dissect all of this is somewhere between 60 and 75% of these kids crash in their first 2 years after getting their license.
Yeah, some are minor. But
yeah, and exactly. But at the end of the day, it's just a failure of the system. And we want to see people not crash. It's completely avoidable. And in countries where, if you look at the way things were back in the 70s, the United States was actually the safest place in the world to drive. Today, we're generally around 40th place. And those countries that enjoy far lower crash rates, they don't have these same losses of life. They don't have the same number of crashes, period. And ultimately, they're safer on their roads.
And do these other countries do programs like yours?
It's mandatory in a lot of these. So basically, we look at this as a couple different things we do. We've got this hands-on driving program, which we'll talk a little bit about. We go out to communities and try to educate them. We really want to educate parents more than anything else and try to get their teens in to do the driving and the parents as well, because driving here, I noticed they're not all as great as we'd like them to be. But ultimately, we're trying to educate people that driving is more dangerous than they necessarily realize, and then ultimately see as many drivers as we can.
Sure. So tell us specifically about the crash prevention program.
So we have a 4.5-hour course that we offer nearby here, the South Weymouth Naval Air Station. We have a site up on the North Shore. We go out to Western Mass occasionally. And that program puts drivers in emergency situations and teaches them how to stay in control of the car. And the first drill I always describe, if I can, just so that you appreciate what we're going to have these students do, everyone has to do a panic stop at somewhere between 50 and 60 miles an hour. And that's an intimidating thing to do. When we tell you to slam on the brakes, what happens a lot of time is this car goes flying down the runway, and we tell them that once you pass these set of cones, slam on the brakes and stop before this wall of cones. And they'll slam on the brakes, and you watch the car dive down, and then it bounces back up again, and then they hit the wall of cones. And what happened was they freaked out. They were intimidated by the way the car behaved. The seatbelt locked up, the pedal pulsated, the wheel gyrated, the noises, and they took their foot off the brake.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing, and I mean, tell everybody, well, I'll tell everybody, when the first time you're out driving with your kid, take them to a parking lot. And you don't have to be going 50 or 60 to do this. You can probably be going 20 or 30. Just have them to slam on the brakes, because what's going to happen, the first time they do that, that pedal's going to feel so funny that they're going to think something's wrong and they're going to release it.
And actually, it's just as common with adult drivers, because we learned without ABS brakes.
Right. What's ABS stand for?
Anti-lock brake system.
It is, anti-lock.
Yeah, and so what happens is people don't know what it does, and the first time they feel it, it's oftentimes, it's either the snow, and they take the car back to the dealership and say something's wrong, or it's they were driving at a fairly high rate of speed and had to aggressively stop, and they didn't know what, and if that intimidates you, and for new drivers, they hear about ABS and driver's ed, maybe, if they take driver's ed, a lot less kids are taking driver's ed today, which is why we're seeing that crash rate increase over the age of, 19 and above. But the reality is we don't understand all this technology that's gone into cars. It's made them safer. We don't lose as many lives as we did necessarily in the 70s, although it's getting, up there, but we're crashing at a rate that is really, unacceptable.
So, full disclosure, about 10 years ago, I went with my oldest daughter when she was getting her license, and we went to the program, and I took it with her. There's the ability to do that. And I learned so much, never mind what she learned, and it was just an incredible situation. So, from personal experience, I'm urging everybody. I know it saves lives, because once you go through it, you'll know the things that you never want your kid to experience for the first time when they need to know how to do something. And to me, what you guys do is you show us that beforehand, so it's not strange.
We want you to experience. I mean, the little known fact is if you do crash, the chances of you replicating that crash are fairly low. You might crash another way,
right?
But the reality is we want you to experience that crash in a safe environment where nobody gets hurt. And the other benefits are you're probably going to save off your auto insurance. You know, you can save between 5 and 10% off your auto insurance, some more with some of the carriers, and just the peace of mind, as you described. I mean, knowing that they've had this experience. We've had somewhere over 30,000 graduates go through the program, and you look at it today, the insurance carriers that we have as partners have shared some really impressive statistics. We say it's about a 70% difference between those who just go through driver's ed, but you know, we've got discounts out there that they don't give it away for nothing. It's because they're reducing the crashes.
So how do I engage you guys?
Sure. So our website is driveincontrol.org. You can contact us from there goes to me. In town, we have a great relationship with the Mass State Auto Dealers Association, and Jack Madden Ford is sponsoring teams. So that's drastically reducing the cost of training. We are a nonprofit, but we ask people to pay $350 if they can afford it, because that's about what it costs us to do the course. But at the end of the day, Jack Madden's making it available at only $99. And then if they have struggle with that, we have supporters out there who've unfortunately lost family members who help us with financial aid for families that need it. So dollar figure, it's never an excuse. The biggest issue we run into is time, and we want people to recognize that this is worth the 6 hours it might take.
I can personally attest to that.
And I will say the other thing we're willing to do is, you know, if there's people in the community here who want us to come and talk to parents at the high school or a local Rotary Club or something like that, just say the word. We'd be happy to engage you.
So are there any tips you just want to give?
So you were talking about something earlier, one of the drills we do. One of the bigger problems we have here in Massachusetts is rear-end collisions. And you should know, we live in the state, in the area, the city of Boston is one of the worst places in the world to drive, let alone just the United States. We see fewer losses of life than you might expect because we have a lot of traffic, so you can only go so fast, and we have these amazing hospitals, so you're gonna get helped out pretty quick. But one way we can reduce all these crashes is to give more following distance. And a lot of us, I won't put your camera people on the spot, but a lot of us learned that you want to travel at 1 car length for every 10 miles an hour. You want to leave 1 car length between you and the car in front of you for every 10 miles an hour. And the reality is that's nowhere near enough. And in fact, we want you to give 3 seconds.
Right.
And so if
I
you
would-
give,
I
I was
remember
going to put you on the spot, but I figured that'd be nice.
You can always put me on the spot. I embarrass myself all the time. So.
But if you can count out 3 seconds. After that vehicle in front of you passes something, you count out 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, and you leave that much space, you're going to be much safer. You're going to have an opportunity to react. You're going to be able to stop in time. We've been working with a lot of people in bigger vehicles. Some of the bigger vehicles, you need to leave more. When your kids go out and they're in the minivan and they got 6 of their friends, that should be more like 4 seconds. But a lot of people will say to us, hey, I can't do that. Look at the traffic on here. Everybody's going to cut me off. You know, in my travel here, 5 or 6 people got in front of me, and I had to back off about a second. So let's say maybe I'm 6 seconds later here than I would have been.
Yeah.
It worked out okay. We made it in time.
Yeah, and I forget if you said this, but most of your instructors are race car drivers, right?
Yeah, so we're not there to try to promote racing. We're not going to try to turn young drivers into race car drivers, but they're experts. Exactly. They can have their eyes closed, sit in the passenger seat, and tell you what you did wrong, and that's really valuable. And this is not a situation with all those graduates we've had through the program. One kid, I think, slammed his hand in the car door, and I'm blaming him on that one. We've never had any kind of incident. It's a very safe thing that we're doing. And frankly, when you participated, it may have been when we were going under the name Skid School, when we were working with the mass auto dealers, and the term skid school's kind of scared away some of the parents. Yeah. So crash prevention has kind of been how we've been describing it, and that's really what it does.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I love the fact that it's in control, because it is in control.
Yeah.
It's not like you say, it's not a dangerous thing. But I'll just share the one story. One of the drills that they have you do is, it involves 3 cars. So there's a lead car, and that has a rope attached with a cone on it. And then they have 2 other cars that are, far enough away from each other so they're not a problem. So my job, I was driving, my daughter was in the back seat, and the instructor was right next to me. And so my job was to keep up with the cone on the car in front of me. My daughter's job was to try to distract me. Put real life situation, you're in a car with your friends, they're gonna be distracting you, not on purpose, but that's reality. So we're driving down, and my daughter starts talking to distract me, and all of a sudden she says, "Dad, I'm pregnant." And so that was a good distraction.
That was a bet, I bet.
And then we're going further, and then of course, she did it too early because the guy didn't stop in front of me. And so, but the instructor, right, because he knows when they're gonna stop, he says, "You know how fast you're going?" So I look down, and when I look down to look at my speedometer, that's when the other guy stopped. And then, so I missed it by probably a second, slammed on my brakes, And if that had been a real situation, I would have been halfway through that car if it was right behind.
And the point behind that exactly is we want you to know is how important it is to be paying attention, that following distance thing again, and ultimately we're using as much drama as we can. Slamming on the brakes at 60 miles per hour wakes you up.
Yeah.
There are a few kids who want to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, a Sunday, maybe a school vacation day, but by 8:15, 8:30, they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they're enjoying it, and that's really part of what the experience is.
Yeah, it was way more, and you shouldn't do this because it's fun, but I'm telling you, it was a lot of fun doing it, and as an adult, I learned a lot, as I said earlier, and I totally recommend it, enthusiastically, without reservation, and, you know, they're a 501c3 now, so they can take donations. They're working with Jack Madden. They're trying to make it affordable for every person to be able to do it. And is there anything else that we want to share?
I would tell your audience, whether it's for your teen, your parent, your employees, any drivers that are out there today, we can help them, and we love to do it. So just contact us. We'd be happy to help. And I'll leave you one other tip. Seatbelts, because it always blows my mind. Massachusetts was down in 48th, 49th place for a long time. We bumped all the way up to 42nd or something, but it's still embarrassing. We're supposed to be so smart. And one of the things when we talk to young drivers, we ask them why they're not wearing seatbelts. And percentage-wise, they tend to be one of the larger numbers. Do you have any idea why they don't?
Yeah, messes up their clothes?
You would think maybe, but consistently the answer we get is they don't plan to crash. And you got to remember that there's this whole frontal lobe development and invincibility, and this is part of all of our issues. I mean, we're using these phones today thinking we're invincible, and we don't recognize the limitations we have. But with seatbelts, you know, when one of the drills we do is we have them all in their seatbelts, and they're going in and out of cones, and they're bouncing around in the car, as you probably remember. And then we sit there and say to them, where would you be right now? Where would you be sitting if you weren't wearing your seatbelt?
Right.
And that seems to resonate. We see light bulbs go off. When we do that in communities, we'll come to a community and actually just do that driving portion, not necessarily let the kids drive. And we will increase their seatbelt use because they realize that seatbelt is there to keep them behind the wheel in the first place. Keep them secure. It's hard to drive if you're sitting in the passenger seat. So wear your seatbelt.
Yeah, very good. Awesome. Well, thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you again.
And you know, I can't recommend it enough. I really mean that. And it saves lives. So right then, it's worth it.